I was very keen on the European Union enlargement and played a major role in it in the early years because I believe that neighbors should cooperate with each other. And so I really like the OSCE framework. I think it's right, and I think it is proper for Europe to have a European security arrangement. All over the world, the regions are divided internally. Typically Cold War divisions, often on a strategy, imperial US strategy of impera et divide. So we want division. The US is stoking divisions in Northeast Asia. China, Japan is on our side. I'm sorry, Japan and Korea are on our side. China's on the other side. We're forging a new military alliance, AUKUS, as you know, which is Australia, US, UK for nuclear submarines in Australia. Just what we need, just what Australia needs. What the solution is, each region should cooperate, and African Union should cooperate internally. Europe should, of course, aim to include Russia. Of course, are you kidding? How could it not be, other than to fall under the nuclear threat day by day again? So all of this cancel culture is mind-boggling in how wrong-headed it is. By the way, even the New York Philharmonic canceled a Rachmaninoff concert for May. You can't even imagine how, I could never imagine how crude this is. This is high culture. They can't figure out to play Rachmaninoff and that's okay. Or there were protests about Tchaikovsky, about don't play Sleeping Beauty at Christmas time. Even here, it was an issue. Please, what is more beautiful than Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty? Maybe a few Strauss waltzes also. Okay, I would say that they're right up there. But we should not be behaving this way. And the demonization makes nobody safe. It solves no problems. It puts everybody on a hair trigger, and we are in a nuclear age. And so this is my basic idea is UN Charter and regional cooperation and globally agreed goals. Sustainable Development Goals, Paris Climate Agreement, UN Convention on the Law of the Seas, the High Seas Treaty, the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework. In other words, let's actually take care of people and the planet instead of the $2.2 trillion spent last year on military armaments. If we could get a bit of that to get kids in school, we'd make a much better world for the hundreds of millions of children who are not in school because their governments are too broke to be able to afford high schools for them. So this is what we should be doing. We actually have globally agreed goals. We have the OSCE. We have the means to do this. US politicians should not fly to Taiwan and declare that we're going to defend Taiwan at all costs. We had agreed 50 years ago to a one China policy, and that's the right policy. And China believes in that because starting in 1839, the Western imperialist powers, followed by Japan, tried to destroy China on several occasions or to conquer China. So They're not too keen on that happening again. I understand that. We should have some prudence. So we're not so far away from a peaceful world because the vast majority of people in the world want it. And we don't really have, China, by the way, is not aiming to take over the world. That's another long evening. I have gone to China for 42 years, many times a year on many cases. It's the last thing in the world that I'm worried about, is China taking over the world. It's not even a category. In 2,000 years of Chinese statecraft, China has not launched one overseas war. 2,000 years. The one that you could count is when the Mongols controlled Beijing and launched an invasion of Japan in, I think, 1274, though I may have the date wrong, and the kamikaze winds, a typhoon, defeated the Mongol fleet. Other than that, never. You know, Britain and France fought with each other almost every year for 1,000 years, one way or another. But Japan and China never, except Japan invading China on 3 occasions, never China invading Japan. So don't worry so much about China. Really don't. Nice place, good food, fascinating culture. Go have a visit.
Right. So before I ask you the very last question, I just want to add to your observation. There was China, Taiwan, in the last survey of the European Council on Foreign Relations, which is a transatlantic think tank. There was a poll asking citizens, not government, citizens of the European Union, if it comes to a conflict between the US and China over Taiwan, 65% of the Europeans would say, 60 to 65% would say they rather would stay neutral instead of siding with China or even siding with the US. So European citizens might think differently than their governments. But I cannot avoid asking this very last question now, because you're sitting here as an American, and you also wrote a piece about the